me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I will ask Heather to please call the roll.
Chairman Bray is present. Commissioner Kish is present. Commissioner Keys is present. Commissioner Maloney is present. Commissioner Steiner is present. Commissioner Walters is present. Vice Chairman Barnes is absent. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. With that, can I please have a motion to excuse Commissioner Barnes from tonight's meeting?
I second.
I gotta get a motion first.
Oh, sorry. I'd like to make a motion to excuse Mr. Barnes from the meeting this evening. A second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Maloney, seconded by Commissioner Keys to excuse Commissioner Barnes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 5, is there any non-agenda items that the public would like to address at this time? Any speaker cards? Perfect. Item number 6, this is a portion for ex parte communication. Is there any disclosures from any of the commission members? Thank you. We have no old business this go around, and so we'll jump right into 8.1 new business. I will open the public hearing for the PV 303 planned area PAD amendment for a half an acre. And Chris.
Got the boss.
Wow.
Important half acre. Yeah.
Important half acre, that's right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. First, thank you all, Commission, for coming to our special meeting tonight. This is our one business item on the agenda for tonight, and then we're going to recess for just a couple of moments and come down to the table for our work session type items. As you indicated, Mr. Chairman, this is a request of PV 303 for some rezoning on a half-acre parcel of property. This parcel of property is located at the northeast portion of the intersection of Indian School and 303. It is a parcel of property that was recently finalized and acquired by Sunbelt, and they are simply seeking to absorb it, if you will, into the larger PV 303 development. It will ultimately be a portion of the property where the new spec building is just recently completed there that you can see that's been built. So it will be overall part of that campus development for that entire project. It's pretty straightforward. It just has the same exact entitlements, is requesting the same exact entitlements as the rest of PV 303. We did do notification on this as a part of our standard process. There was no neighborhood meeting because there's no residents within the immediate area. We have not heard of any, been contacted by anybody. So the staff recommendation is to approve.
Thank you. Is there any questions for staff?
The applicant is also here tonight, Mr. Chairman, as well.
Thank you, Chris. Would the applicant like to address the commission?
I'm happy to. I think Chris covered pretty much everything. Obviously, this was well, first of all, thank you for having me up here. Obviously, this was acquired by First Industrial recently. It's part of the overall UPS facility that recently came to Goodyear. This hard corner used to be owned by a third-party landowner. UPS wanted this incorporated into their overall design and plans for the future. So we're obviously here in conjunction with this. We're also doing a replat to bring it all into the same property. We just want to make sure we have uniform zoning. So that's the purpose of bringing this up to you guys.
And just for the record, can you state your name and address, please?
TJ Weed with Merit Partners. We're located at 6720 North Scottsdale Road in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? No. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Is there any speakers cards on this? Probably not. All right. With that, I will close the public meeting. Is there any discussion amongst the commission? All right, with that, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item number 17210000004.
I second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Kish, seconded by Commissioner Maloney to approve the PV 303 PAD amendment to the half acre. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. At this time, I will take a short recess to rearrange to the board table, and we'll start up again. All right, we'll call the meeting back to order, and we'll move into agenda item 8.2 with economic development. I don't have a name on here, so.
Michelle Laurie is my name. I'm the Director of Economic Development. Thank you. We weren't, I think Christopher wasn't quite sure who was going to be
who's
here.
gonna show up? Okay.
Is that why my name's not there, Christopher?
Yes.
Okay, just kidding. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Chairman Bray, for having me here, and Commissioners for having me here tonight. Wanted to give you an update on economic development. I know that you're very familiar with it, but I thought to for the public and everyone just to kind of give an update on what's going on in economic development. What really is economic development? That's kind of what I'm going to start with. And just start talking about what we do. So just to give, you could define economic development in a lot of ways, but I really like this definition because it seems very complete. And it's basically that economic developers promote economic well-being and quality of life for their communities by creating, retaining, and expanding jobs that facilitate growth enhance wealth, and provide a stable tax base. And you'll notice I'll go back to that a little bit in this presentation. Is the business attraction side is kind of the part that people really like. That's the interesting part. But there's so many other pieces to economic development. It's the creation of jobs. It's the retaining and expanding. And most of our employment base actually comes from expanding businesses and from retention calls. And I'll get into a little bit of what we do there. We are a department of 6. There's a director as well as 3 project managers, and those 3 project managers are their responsibilities are divided by industry. So we have one, Harry Paxton, who I know a few of you have met, and he's been here the longest at Goodyear since 2007, just had his 10-year anniversary, and he deals with aerospace and aviation as well as industrial. And we also have Robert Ito, who is our small business project manager. He deals with retail as well, and that's something exciting we'll talk about in a little bit. I know as planning commissioners, that's one of the things. I'm a resident of Goodyear as well, and I know that's one of the things most of our residents talk about, which I was just talking about earlier today. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So retail is very important to us, very important to the council, because that is what we really hear from our constituents that really want. So we'll talk about how that comes to the table. And so we also have a project manager that does the Innovation Hub, which is at the Goodyear Library in our complex. And we'll talk about some successes there. She also does healthcare and office development. And then we have a marketing coordinator who's responsible for really getting our information out, the nice pieces that we put out, how we present to our clients, and is really responsible for website, social media. That's where most people get a hold of us. So very important position. Then we have a management assistant, and she helps us with our budget, keeping everything straight, and she does everything for us. So she's great. That's Tiffany. And so I just wanted to kind of familiarize you with us. We're always here to talk to any of you as well as the public. I know you have all my information, but very interested in talking to residents as well. And as you go through your kind of what you do, as I know you kind of get probably asked by a lot of different folks of what's going on here and there, feel free to pass my name and contact information along. I'd love to talk to people. So just a little bit of information about economic development. Here is something I like, it's very important to understand how economic development works. In economic development, we're really tasked with the commercial development, but what a lot of it, especially in a growing community like Goodyear, what a lot of our growth depends on is population and housing. Very important, and I know that's something you're confronted with all of the time, is developments and housing developments. It's something our council is too. We need to grow, to continue to grow our job base, because that's what people need, is the workforce. That's the absolute number one thing, is what is your workforce population? So that is the number one question we get asked when trying to bring jobs here. So that job creation, as well as that's what helps us bring the retail and entertainment that our residents are so hungry for. And we really focus on that. We're really told that a lot of things that are important for that is the daytime population. I know I've talked to Commissioner Steiner about that several times, but it's really that daytime population and having the people. We have great incomes. We're a great community, and people that make retail decisions really are very impressed by Goodyear. And what we're usually told is that we need, just more growth and more concentration of that daytime population. So that's what we're really concentrating on. That's why it's so important to explain to residents and to folks that it really is important when we get those jobs and we get the population. Is the more we grow, the more we're able to get those amenities for them as well. Please ask me any questions in between if you have any, but be willing to stay till the end as well. So Goodyear, our stage of development, it's very interesting. You see there are yellow, boundaries there on our PowerPoint, and we're 190 square miles. So we're only 10, 11% built out right now. And you'll see, if you see Highway 85 there on the picture, most of our development is actually north of that. But we certainly do have south, and I'll show you some of our major employer map next. We have the very important community of Estrella that really we are very fortunate to have in our community. It is, you probably saw the news recently where it's one of the fastest growing communities in the country. And we're very fortunate to have such a great community there. And I know they definitely are wanting more retail restaurants and entertainment, so we're working to do that. But the more they grow, the more that's going to help go forward as well. But so that's kind of our stage of development. We're in a stage that we are continuing to grow, which is really great. We want to keep the momentum going. And that's our major employer map. As you see there, if you see the top of the map here, this part right here, you'll see that we've got it's just this section is where most of our major employment is taking place right now. I have a colleague that likes to say there's more wildlife than people down here, but I'm not sure how accurate that is, but likes to say that. So he's the one that's been here for 10 years. So anyway, we really are growing in this area, and that's where our major employment is. You'll see some of our assets there is our airport. We've really got the ballpark, which is very important. We've got the Loop 303 that you just made a decision on that and growth of that development in that area. So this is our major employment, and we really have a very diverse employment. Our largest employment, if we look at our top 10 employers, are generally in healthcare, manufacturing, and logistics. So it's aerospace and aviation as well. Those are usually a little bit smaller employers, but they're up there too. And that's what we highlight on this map, and this is on our website, but we'd be glad to distribute it as well. And so those are our major employers, and like I said, on our website, and be glad to distribute it to anyone who'd like to see that. I wanted to just go over a little bit, we call, and you've probably heard Christopher talk about this a lot of times, our Hello to C of O, and that's basically our development continuum process. Economic development relies on the development services departments and the engineering departments to really kind of complete the cycle of a project. So we're able to kind of introduce them and bring them in the door, but we all work together to make sure our projects, so we're all just as responsible for these projects when they come in. And so we really appreciate their service as well as your service. So this is something we like to talk about in our department. That's one of the things that we talk about a little bit in terms of incentives for projects, because incentives are tough. We don't have a lot of money lying around to provide incentives to different projects. And so time is money. And our process and our customer service is really important to our customers, and that's what we sell. And we've really worked in the last couple of years. I know I've been here about 3 years, as well as Christopher and Rebecca Zook in engineering just a little bit longer. And we've really been working on creating that center of service so that is a big part of our sales pitch, is that we can get you through our process. We want to help you in anything that you need. We come up with solutions. It might not be everything exactly when you need it, but hey, if this is not, and I think you've seen that in your work, and you do the same thing, right? You do the same thing at your planning and zoning meetings where, okay, this might not work, but here's some solutions that might work for you. And we've had a lot of success, I think, in that area, and we continue to grow and change. So what really governs our work, or is the kind of the strategic plan for our work in economic development, our department of 6, is really called the Focus on Success. And this was a plan that was put together by a group of business and coalition members that came together to create this plan to say, what does Goodyear want to be, and what are our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? This is located on our website. If you go to goodyearaz.gov and you type in focus, it's Focus on Success. You can read that. Now, this was introduced, it's a 5-year plan, and the first year of the plan is fiscal year 15. So we're coming up, 19 will be the last year. So we're probably coming up on doing another plan, which will be great. And I'll go into this a little bit on what this is, but, things have evolved, and so it'll be really interesting to see. Some of those strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are still the same, but some of them have really evolved. We've grown a lot in these past several years, and so it'll be fun to kind of start a new plan, and we'll be looking to you for some of your thoughts on that. But the process really came together with that group of citizens as well as business leaders, and created that economic vision for what we wanted to be. And a lot of that really is we wanted, and it's something we actually talked about earlier today, is wanting our Goodyear residents to be able to work in Goodyear as well, because we all love living here, and it's really creating those employment opportunities. And that is it. Somewhere, wanting Goodyear to be where you can, of course, live, work, and play. And so it's all three of those things coming together. But, for the Economic Development Department, it's all three of those, but really focusing on how do we create those job opportunities here? What are our assets, and how do we do that? So that's what this focuses around. And the strategy is really, it's an industry cluster strategy. And that is kind of what were those industries that Goodyear really has a foothold in, and what do they have the most opportunity to flourish in? And those were, we really saw 5 of those industries that were those, and that was aerospace and aviation, of course, with Goodyear, Phoenix Goodyear Airport, as well as information and technology. So that's software development, but also data centers and things like that that would be that would work very well in Goodyear, as well as higher education. Higher education is very interesting. When you do your we did our not employee but citizen survey to our residents, and when they were asked what are the things you want to see more of in Goodyear, number 1 was parks, number 2 was recreation opportunities, and number 3 was higher education opportunities, which was very interesting. And so we've, the council really thought, okay, we need to make sure that's a part of this strategy. And so we've really tried to do that. And colleges and universities are really starting small and growing up. So we did an RFP a couple of years ago about a year ago, to get to see what the interest was around the country in Goodyear. And we've actually had 7 colleges and universities respond. And we've had a couple that we're in negotiations with, and they start out small. They don't start out as a big campus and grow, but they start out in occupying office facilities. And so we've got one in negotiations right now that's looking at a couple of office spaces that we have. So really, we have Franklin Pierce right here in this building, and that's really important too. Franklin Pierce, which is headquartered or originates in New Hampshire. And that has really helped us to attract also kind of the young community to our area as well. And that's what it's all about too, is attracting kind of talent. So that's important. So going on to manufacturing and medical. Manufacturing is critical to us, and that is because people that make their products are most invested in your community. They really are. Manufacturing is so important, and it's really very different than most people think of manufacturing. We have Sub-Zero as one of our largest manufacturers here, and that's really one of our top employers. They've been able to grow to about 525, I believe they are now. And really wasn't sure when they were going to get to that number when they first came here in 2010, but they got to it pretty quickly. And we've found that they really, the more you make your product, the more you're invested in your community. So it's an interesting tie there. Medical, very important. Top employers are Abrazo, West Campus, Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and we're really trying to make that flourish in terms of finding the supply chains for those companies, as well as what kind of work they're doing that we can use for some more research and technology work as well. So working with them on that, and they're very good partners. And that's part of why retention and expansion is important. Our retention work to those companies helps us to bring in new ideas, new thoughts on companies, and so forth. So that focus on success is really an industry cluster strategy, but it really goes, let's see what my next thing is, it really goes toward tourism as well. Tourism's very important for Goodyear. We want people to be able to make this a destination for shopping, for spring training, for events and things, and that's what, if you've noticed, our council's very interested in that as well, so it's another area.
Michelle,
Yes.
I had a question for you.
Yes.
On the 4-year plan that you had,
Yes.
how successful have you been at meeting all the objectives?
We have been, so the objectives, thank you for asking that, Commissioner Steiner. I'm used to calling you Walt, so I always have to check. Commissioner Steiner, we've had, mixed success in certain areas, but I'll tell you where we've been very successful and where maybe not so much. I think that in those target industry clusters, we've been very successful. And so I'd be willing to share with you anytime the kind of the year 1 through 3 that we've had, kind of the numbers of jobs. And so in those, especially in aerospace and aviation, as well as manufacturing, some of the things that we're seeing. So I'd say that's where we've been really successful, those industry cluster strategies. Also in our marketing efforts, kind of getting more out there about what Goodyear, that's part of it, is what is Goodyear? How are we recognized outside of the greater Phoenix area? I think we've been very successful in that area. We always have more to do. But I think, for our measurements, and we do have reports. We do reports for council every year, so I'd be glad to share them with you, kind of our successes. And I'd say, some of the tough points have been we had a lot of areas in there that we thought might have grown at this point, like the city center development, some of those areas that really we were kind of coming out of the recession, not really sure when this plan was, we were pretty strong in 2014, but not too sure what the future would hold. So I think, we thought that development might grow a little more. We're really fortunate that we have the Hudson Commons development coming in, and I know you're very familiar with that, with the residential as well as the hotel developments, and I think that'll be coming before you soon if it hasn't already yet. But with the city being able, making the decision to really, which was very good, making the decision to put resources into the parks and recreation facilities that we're going to see come online instead of really that city center, city hall type development that might have been seen in the past as something we were going to do soon, and it's not in the CIP, foreseeable future. So I think that, we pictured some more development around there. I'd say if I had to pick some areas, that's maybe, where we had to kind of change focus a little bit. I would say too, one of the things we really wanted to do was do some incubation activity, some smaller business, maybe use the former Lockheed Martin facility as an incubation type for companies facility. And we've applied for different grants for that opportunity to use that. It's kind of tough because it's on a county island. There on Litchfield, that's actually a county island, so we can't use city resources there. So we've applied for different grants. And that's kind of taken on a different look. We hope that you'll be able to do a tour. Daryl Burton from Alliance Management, who owns it, has done a great job. He's kind of rebranded that area called Flight, F-L-I-T-E. And so maybe in the fall we'll be able to do some kind of tour or activity around that, so you'll be able to see it. But, that was something we talked about doing, is the kind of the incubation activity, and we haven't quite gotten there yet, but we're still looking at it.
Is there a particular sector that you want to go after? Since you've been successful in one particular sector, you're going to lay off of that and challenge another area.
Yes, and I think, the area we really want to be more successful in, and we really put a lot of things into place, but it takes time, is really healthcare. I think healthcare is one of our industries that, we feel like we've had success there. We have 2 wonderful anchors And it's really, I think that the Wellspring Park, kind of making that the Goodyear Community Health Park that's now called Wellspring, and they've done a master plan for that on the retention basins there right on I-10. I think that will get some excitement around it, but I think that's where we need to put some extra energy, because I think that is the place where, we're perfectly situated.
Well, according to the way the economy is working now, the way the market's working now, IT is number one, healthcare is
Yes.
number two. So they might
And
be
IT.
particular sectors that you want to go after because they're growing.
Yes,
And
and
they're driving.
you're absolutely right, and IT is very important too, Commissioner. So, sorry, I know you probably want me to move along. Christopher's giving me the hook. No, that's okay. Thank you. So I'm just going to give you a couple of highlights from this fiscal year. We just ended this fiscal year in June 30th, and so I just wanted to give you some highlights. We talked about different types of formation, of how jobs are created. One is formation, and so one of the things we've really wanted to, our council has really wanted us to become is kind of that central place for entrepreneurs, and I'll tell you that's really started to take hold. We've had with our Innovation Hub, we have the project manager, Dara Mann, I've talked about before. She it has free workshops as well with speakers, as well as ASU Startup School, which is a way for folks to say, hey, I have an idea and I really want to start my own business, but I have no idea how to do it. And so they're able to come in and be able to start that with ASU. And so that's been really successful. I can tell you when I came here, I started running it, we'd have, 2 or more people come. We have like 30 people that come on the weekends for it. And people are really energized by each other. And it's really, they want more opportunities to be with each other. So we started doing these work kind of meetups. Where we have a speaker and they meet together and get to talk about ideas. So that's been really successful, and we've had almost 1,000 interactions. I'm very close to that. We've also had, that's been 100% increase over last fiscal year. So it's just really gained momentum, and that's really important. It's the starting people. I talked about incubation, and I talked about that. We've really started that. And so we've been really successful there in those ideas. And what I was kind of talking about where I think we might not have been is more of the technology sector, incubations, where we've wanted to use kind of the Lockheed Martin facility as that type of technology incubator, defense incubator type activity. Really what we're seeing is people that have ideas in other areas that really want to just know, and residents that really want to know, how do I start my own business? And that's been something that's really been, championed by council. So we're excited about that. So that's the Innovation Hub. Then economic growth, with job growth in fiscal year 17, our department measures, these are the ones that we were directly involved with. We were able to help facilitate the creation of 1,800 jobs, as well as $368 million in capital investment. And that's the capital that's put into any machinery and equipment, but also the purchase of land as well. And it's been in diverse industries. So it's been aerospace, healthcare, logistics, and manufacturing, as I brought up before. And there's some things that you'll see there that groundbreaking is for Adelante Healthcare. That's actually broken ground. That's going near Abraza West Campus. So that's healthcare, manufacturing and logistics, Huhtamaki, KPS Global, and UPS, of course, as well as Aldi, which is an escrow on some of the city-owned property that is close to Cotton Lane and Indian School Road on that southwest corner there. So they're in escrow now, but they look to close in December. Aldi, yeah. Yeah, and so, go ahead.
Excuse me, Michelle. I'd just like to point out for the commission that you all as a body played a role in every one of those with the exception of KPS, which was a tenant improvement on an existing building.
Yes.
So a part or a portion of each one of those other properties that Michelle is talking about, 1,842 jobs, you all played a significant part in creating that entitlement and allowing that project to move forward. So the point here is the action that you all take helps set the city up for success. So thank you.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. That's very true. So thank you for bringing that up, Christopher. Okay, so let's talk about retail and entertainment because if you're like me, so I live in Palm Valley 5, and I'm a resident of Goodyear, and I'm also the economic development director, so I get a lot of conversation about retail and entertainment. That's everybody's favorite thing to talk about, and how, especially, you know, our residents want more restaurants and retail. So our council, you know, is really attentive to that and has really listened to that. We've focused on that in economic development. As I said before, you know, it's very reliant upon housing, population growth, as well as that daytime population, so that job creation growth. So that's why that's all works together in that gear format that I showed you earlier. That those are the most important things to bringing in retail. But we really do work very diligently at attracting new retail, and so we've been successful this year with 17 new locations, and so you'll see some of them there. Some different things like Elevate Trampoline Park. We don't have anything like that here, so that was really exciting. That I don't know if you saw the West Valley View this morning. They did an article on them, which was great. So that was there. There were actually several businesses in this morning's West Valley View that were interviewed. So En Route was one of them as well, that En Route Coffee and Tea House that's there on Roosevelt. And, you know, a lot of the questions we get, which you probably get, and I talked to Commissioner Maloney a little bit about this earlier, but the regional shopping center. So that is something that I get, that's probably the most common question I get asked, and I'm sure you do too, is what's going on with the mall? And so, you know, just to give you a little update there is, you know, the answer is that with their agreement with the city, Macerich is the developer there, as you well know, with their agreement with the city to get reimbursed for the infrastructure that they put into the area, which you see the street lights, the curb, the gutter, all of that, it was about $43 million. So they're very invested in the community, yes. And so they're very invested in the community. And so that what the phasing for the mall that was last done in the amendment to the agreement in November of 2014 was there would be 2 phases. And one phase was to be the Harkins or a Cineplex. It could have been anything. It could have been any brand, but a multiplex theater. And that it would have also the 2 pads that you see south of that, the dirt pads, right on McDowell, ready for restaurants to be placed there. And there's room for 2 or 3 there. And that would have all the infrastructure there together. So Macerich was to put in that. So it has all the infrastructure ready to build. And then that was to be completed by December of 2016, so that was done. So the theater was to be open, those pads were to be infrastructure ready. That was done by December 2016. The second phase is for another anchor. Harkins is 1 anchor, but another anchor, and that's defined in the agreement as 100,000 square feet or larger, as well as 300,000 square feet of retail inline space by 2021, and that's December of 2021. That's how it stands right now. We all know how mall development is going, and around the country, malls really aren't being developed. And so, you know, it's really, and I get resident emails and phone calls and things about this all the time. I'm just really excited about something to develop there. And we're really fortunate in a lot of ways because we have the busiest oreganos. We know that. We have the busiest oreganos in the state, and it's only statewide, so it's the busiest one. And we were thinking, okay, well, maybe that's because it's new, but it's actually not as new as Surprise. It's still doing really well. It's the best. So it's doing really well. The Harkins is one of the top in the country. And so what we're really doing, it's working with Macerich to develop that interest in that area because Macerich also owns the market at Estrella Falls, which is around there, which is where the power center is, which is there. And so it's really bringing attention there, bringing attention to the mall site. And so it might in the next 6 months take a different look and feel. And I think residents are really ready for that. They want to see something develop. And so it might take a different look and feel. And I would assume that in the next, 6 months or so, there might be some conversation with the developer on that. And that might change what that looks like because it's really, we don't see a lot of anchors that are coming in that are 100,000 square feet or above, like a Macy's or a Dillard's.
Has there been any discussion of something like a Carolyn type?
Yes.
where you have the retail on the bottom and living on the top.
Yes, mixed use has absolutely been talked about, and that it might take a different format, that it might really look like that. There might be some office, there might be some that type of development in there too, to really create a place where people go daytime and nighttime. And so it's really, and I do get a lot of communications, and I know I've talked a lot about this with several of you, is that, you know, it's really going to look different. It's not that type of mall that people think, yeah. So it's, and they really are thinking that way, and so is our council. And so very interested in wanting things to move forward. And so really it's a different look at what that looks like. So that I would assume in the next several months there will be more discussion in that area. But so what I tell residents is say, yeah, we have great things, you know, is what we get a lot of is, why don't we see more restaurants and retail and entertainment? That's what I get the most of, and you know, talk to council a lot about that. And what I say to that is, you know, we've got great opportunities. We're in a development stage, but we have some really great things that we use to sell, and that is great location, great demographics, great restaurants and retail that are doing very well. So what we do is we share those numbers with, you know, decision makers, and so we really feel that it's coming. It might be a little later than what people want, but really that us focusing on that, but also focusing on the job creation, as well as, you know, what is so important is that development cycle with the housing and the population. Really, all of that growing is going to help us even more. And we really got a lot of momentum now, and so we really have to keep that going. And what is one thing that's so important, I think, and I've met several of you from the LEAD program, I know. And what's so important is to have ambassadors in your community that speak positively about the community and really promote Goodyear. And so that's one of the things we're looking at really is, how do we get our residents more engaged in promoting our community? Because the more that companies look and see that our residents and our constituents are positive about our community and love living here, the more excitement they get about it as well. And so that goes into, you know, campaigns and that sort of thing about trying to attract retail. But the more that we can really push that and get folks excited about what's going on here and love living here, you know, to promote that. And so that's something we're looking at in terms of staff to really get that kind of more off the ground. I think all the things are helping with the promotion of our businesses in the West Valley View, and some of that activity going on is really, it's really helpful. And so all of that positive attention on social media and in other areas is really going to be helpful.
You know, I was sitting at the yard house. We were going to a hockey game. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking out over this courtyard. Here's kids running around. The fountains are going. They had a band shell over on this side. And there was activity. Little shops. Some of them are closed, of course. Little shops. Then at Kierland Commons, people are up and down the sidewalks, cutting in and out. All roads lead to something. And it would be a perfect idea for here. You have the Harkins here. You could have miniature golf over there. You could have a band shell down over there. But all these roads that shoot out of the center go somewhere, by businesses, by places that work, by living spaces.
Exactly. And that's really, I'm sorry, I didn't know if you were finished yet, but absolutely, Commissioner Steiner, that's very important. And that is what we need to be thinking about developing that area, is that it needs to be a place where people go for different things day and night.
Right.
And so it needs to be, the new thought on developing that needs to be on that area. But you're absolutely right. Great examples of Kierland and of Westgate. Great examples there. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, you can forget about the brick and mortar mall.
Right, and I think, you know, you'll see if you kind of pay attention to the way things are going, as you probably have with retail, you can see that even the mall developers are thinking differently. So how, of course, and you know, because the old strategies aren't the same anymore. They're really looking at, how do we combine these new things that are getting presence on the internet, and then you're getting people, drawing people to the stores, is how do we kind of create that feeling? And so you'll see different things that get popular online and then start stores, which is different than it used to be. So it's very different, and we're learning a new way. And so, yes.
I have a question.
Please.
We talk about all these things that, there's so much potential here in Goodyear, and, I live over in Pebble Creek. And, people keep saying to me, so what's with the mall? What's with the mall? Is the problem that the developers or the businesses just won't commit?
Yes.
And if they won't commit, I mean, we've sat and we've passed all this stuff, for development, for housing, for, all this stuff. And it's like, why don't they take that into consideration?
Yes, and I would say that they do take that into consideration, and that's always part of their commitment. So what they want to do, and it's what these people want to do is make money. So they're no. Well, here's the thing: is sometimes we don't. Sometimes we don't think about it. Yes, and that's a very condensed area around. But there's also yes, they do, and that's great. So that shows that we can sustain that, right? So and we do sell that, and so. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but we do have to really tell people that, because it's like they don't. I know, they look at numbers and they look at what's producing around, and the traffic counts and things like that is what they look at. So we try to shift them and look at other things, but they're pretty focused on that. Now we have decent numbers. We need to keep building them. And so, that's what it's all about, is really that cycle that I talked about earlier. That's really what it's all about. But yes, they do. It is that the retail is it's not in a growing stage right now. And so they definitely are having folks that feel like, I can't make the revenue that I want to there. That's absolutely true. That's the stopping point. And so I think what we're trying to do, and it's funny, I just had a conversation with someone about this the other day, is trying to get different ways of encouraging them to look at our market. And that's, by experiencing it. And so that's hard to do, but, it's trying to get folks in and experience it. Because they can go to Oregano's at 5 o'clock on a Sunday. I know I waited an hour and 15 minutes. And I love seeing that. My husband doesn't like I love seeing that. But it's just because, and I know people get upset about that and say, well, why can't we replicate that? Why can't we? And I think that we are on our way to do that. It's slower than we want.
And I think down by the baseball field, they have, all these plans. They're going to put some very interesting housing down there.
Yes.
If they put Top Golf down there.
I know. Well, and you heard the announcement recently, and that is very.
Yeah, Glendale.
Yes. Now here's why, and this is I put our regional hats and think about making money, because that's what they think about. Well, there's two things. So Christopher's like, she's going too long. He always says I talk too much, but the two things with that is that. With Top Golf, they made a decision. We talked to them a lot, and we actually had a great connection with them. And they said, we really want to be, if we're going to go west, we really want to be in that 101 corridor. That was about a 5-year deal in Glendale. They've been working with them for about five years. So we thought we might be able to kind of get in there and be able to convince them. We've talked to them before, the 5-year, we've talked to them before and after, but they really wanted to be in that corridor and said, we can make more profit because we know, and this is just how we have to look at it. We know you'll come east. We don't know people will go west. And we know that they will, and we can show that, but in their mind, they look at the data, the traffic and that sort of thing. So where you've also got to put your regional hat on and say, it's good for that area to develop, because if it's successful there, it's going to be successful here. And you really have to look at it that way. It's important. It's a bummer You know, it's a, and you go, oh, you know, but I sent my colleagues in Glendale congratulations, and I said, that's great. We're jealous, of course, but very happy for you, and we really want, you know, to make the West Valley that place where entertainment, because the more that grows there, the more it's going to grow elsewhere. And so we really have to look at it like that. But oh boy, did I get a lot of conversation about that when that happened. So, and you know, I love talking to residents and folks about how that, you know, even if it's bad news that they feel is bad news, you know, it's something that we can help them a little bit more understand.
You didn't mention NASCAR.
Yes.
And, you know, if you look at industries, what's growing, you know, electric cars,
Yes.
you know, battery facilities. I think I was just reading something in the Wall Street Journal. I didn't read that company, right? But
Very good.
Tesla, I think, was looking for
Yes.
a battery plant, whatever. NVIDIA, growing. You know, take these top companies that have the money that are growing and just, has there been any discussion on really a strategic look at, you know, NASCAR, you know, electric cars? And Phoenix has the experiment, right, with the driverless cars, et cetera. Is there
Exactly.
anything going on in that realm that could be leveraged in terms of a center of excellence?
There absolutely is, and I'd say, yeah, the state, you know, Arizona doesn't get to be kind of on the forefront of a lot of things, but we are on the forefront of that, the driverless vehicles, and so that's exciting, and that's, you know, really the testing, and so what we have to do is make this a place for manufacturing, right?
Exactly.
So it goes, and we absolutely are on that with the regional organizations. I'm chairman of the Greater Phoenix Economic Council Economic Directors Development Team, and we're really working at how do we make Arizona more the location where they look for manufacturing, and it's a lot about workforce and a lot about cost. So it's selling that and making sure that we sell it. So it's like a lot of other things, but yes, we are absolutely working in that. Very smart. Okay, Christopher's like, go on with yourself. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know again. You can. We always want to be part. I want to emphasize this, and I know I've said it before, but I really want to emphasize that part of our success at being able to recruit is making sure that we're promoting our community in terms of the people and how much they love it here. And so the more we are interacting with you all and that you have ideas for us and that you have thoughts, letters to the editor about how great Goodyear is, you know, social media, it's all very important, and that's something we're really saying, and our colleagues in the regional organizations and statewide organizations are saying to us is that the more you promote that, the more you're going to get those things that you need, which is the employment, which will then go to the retail and entertainment that everybody wants so much. So I can't emphasize that enough. And I'd love to be as visible as possible and, you know, really like to take your advice.
Michelle, one last question.
Yes.
How is the tax incentive thing working?
Yes. So the tax incentive, and I'm sorry I didn't mention that, because the Retail and Entertainment Development Impact Fee Incentive Program. So that program was instituted by council with this budget year. And so that, let me just explain to you what that is. Development impact fees are paid at the time of development when a customer pulls their building permit. So it's at the point of development. So that is fees that they pay based on the impacts that they're going to have on the community. So what our council decided to do was take $2 million out of the next 2 years' budget, so this fiscal year, next fiscal year together, $2 million, and offer to back pay to backfill the fund, because by state statute, we cannot waive those fees. We have to pay them, make them whole. So the council has decided to make that whole by reducing 100% the non-utility development impact fees. So what that will enable us to do, and it's only for those that are 5,500 square feet and larger, and that's really for a couple reasons. One is that we didn't want to incentivize fast food restaurants, standalone fast food restaurants, and also what this is really looking to do is get developers in to develop more space. They might split it into smaller areas for smaller restaurants. And things like that, but they usually build more space and then split it up. So that's what we really are looking for, is that new build type of activity. And so it is getting some buzz. We've had, at this point, I believe it has gotten one user so far in the door. And that one's in the development process. And so it's not a huge amount. So it's an incentive, but it's not going to make the difference between, it might accelerate activity because we're only doing it for 2 years, but it's not going to overcome kind of the population, but it will help us accelerate. For example, if there are people that are saying, I want to be in Goodyear, but maybe in 2 years, this might get them going a little more quickly. And so that's what it was really built for. So I think it's going well. It's first 2 months, but have some nibbling, first couple months. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I know we're running short, but I'm always available. I went over my 10 minutes by an hour? So, sorry.
I'm used to it.
I'm used to it. But I'm willing to talk to you anytime, lunch, anything you'd like to do. And I'd love to hear your ideas and thoughts and kind of what you're hearing out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Mr. Chairman, can I make a suggestion, please?
Absolutely.
If
As long as it shortens the meeting.
yeah. Well, it'll help it for sure. The next presentation, if we could go out of order a little bit, would be the development activity updates. If that pleases the commission, Steve Kretsch is going to deliver that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Good. Laney did it. Thank you. Thank you, Laney.
Good evening. I have a short presentation for you that will kind of go over some of the basically development activity that we've seen over the last, especially over 17 and then over, 16 to kind of give you some context. But just to start with, one of the things we do is a pre-application meeting. That's our first contact, usually with the developer or property owner. If they want to do something, let's meet, discuss at a high level kind of what this process will entail. And what we've been seeing is about 3 per week, and that is quite a bit because all of that activity leads to the next step, which is the formal application. And that is where we've really seen quite a jump from last year. And just to date, we're almost 100 more of the submittals than we were this time last year. And we've been able to maintain and even better the review times. We're about 12 business days. A lot of our applications have a 20 business day turnaround, our staff touch time. And we've been doing about 12 business days. And again, that is with the same staff over the last several years that, you all see when we come up forward. And besides the development review, the cases, the applications that you see that come before, you also see a lot of our special projects. And the sign code update, that was a big one that the commission just saw. The overlay district, the large retail user, the new residential district, that's the one that Alex and Christopher will talk with you. Another big one is engineering design standards. The more the specification, the technical standards, our engineering staff, they're working on that right now. That's going to go to council soon. So besides all the development review, we're trying to keep busy updating our codes and process improvements, which I'll kind of go into a little bit later, but trying to keep up with all of this as well. And this one is always kind of like an important one to talk about, what are single-family permits doing? And the commission sees all of that when the plats come through. And then what happens is we start getting in the building permits. And just in looking, we are a little bit higher than this point last year. And over the last few years, you can see 16 where we're at will probably be over that. And in this chart here, this is from the Home Builders Association. We're in the top 10 Goodyear for the amount of permits that we do, single-family permits. And compared to our neighbors, our close neighbors here, Avondale, they're mostly built out, so you see that smaller number. And Buckeye, they have a huge, vast land area, so they're really going to have a lot of permits. But Goodyear here, we're tracking very well. And this is a map that our economic development staff and GIS staff put together. And just kind of shows you the activity the last few years. Where has all this housing activity been occurring? And you notice Pebble Creek, Palm Valley, the late 90s, 2000s, that's where a lot of development happened. The central part of the city along Saraville, that was done at that period as well, parts of Estrella. So now you see development moving further west, up here, northwest Sedea. This will be the next area here, the West Goodyear area. A lot of those applications that you will see coming before you. And then south in Estrella as we're moving down even further. And then multifamily. This was something Michelle talked about as well. We need the people. So we've had 3 in the last year and a half apartments come in. A good amount of units for these projects coming in. And I know the commission doesn't necessarily see multifamily, the site plans, because they're at administrative approval. But these are 3 that we've had come through. And this one right here, the Live Goodyear, that'll be right by the regional mall, right there at Virginia and the Bullard Wash. And this is the picture from what it would look like.
Are they apartments or are they condos?
Rental apartments.
Oh, they're rental apartments. 326, wow.
And then the process improvements. Christopher, the other directors, the management team, they've made process improvement a priority for all of us. And that's helped us manage that, we're twice as busy, but our review times have stayed probably better than they were even before. And that's with the same staff. And just real quick, some of what we've done, development review, that's kind of communicate to us. That's our priority. That's stuff we get to do. They let us block time on our schedules, turn off our email and phones, and that's what we do. And that gives us, a couple of 2-hour blocks where we can just, no interruptions, and get that development due. And then work on one thing at a time. They're not asking us to multitask. Here's this project. Get this one done before you move on to the next one. Make sure you do this one correctly. Good review, get it done. And that helps also with flow and coordination. You know that when you see our staff reports, you can see a lot of different departments had input. Public Works, Water and Sewer, the Fire Department, Police, Engineering. Several years ago, before it was, that project didn't go out till the last person provided their input. So basically it waited till that last person gave us the comments. Now we coordinate with those other departments. So we're all at the same stage. So we're only waiting maybe a day instead of 10 days or 3 weeks. So that helps now, keeping that review time down to that 12 business days, because we're all on the same page, we're all in the same flow, and we're coordinating, communicating between all engineering, planning, building safety, fire. We're all working together now. And because it's been made a priority for us, and we're all trying to do the best that we can. And then another thing, Christopher and the other directors, a lot of other staff, they've met with some of the big developers, the large players in the city, like Newland Communities. What could we do to make our processes more efficient? What could we do to make your projects better? And some of that feedback is going to start to roll into our processes, and that should even help more. And then, we're still trying to do better. What can we do? Maybe with a lot of the projects, they do come through the commission, they end up going to council. Are there any that can be done by staff? Are there others that could stop at the planning commission? I know by certain requirements, state laws, some always have to go to the council, but for those that don't, maybe subdivisions, maybe use permits. I know Christopher is working on some of this. Could those stop sooner, saving the customer and staff several weeks of time and touch time and money? And then we'll be bringing, probably several months from now, but a landscape code update, kind of like the sign code update, because we have landscape standards in several different spots. So this is an effort to pull them all together. It's an effort to work on water conservation efforts, update all our standards, bring that together. But there'll be also a fun element, a design element to it as well, that we can work on to make our communities water conservation, smart there, but also looking good as well. And then, as always, feedback from this body is always very helpful, always very welcome. So with that, Mr. Chairman, any questions? Otherwise, my PowerPoint is done.
Thank you, Steve. I would say I would heavily focus on some of those. I think that going from the commission to the council on some of those issues is very redundant. And we've tried to shorten that by putting our meeting in certain times, but man, there's so much code and everything else that there should be some simple ones that we can pass, and that's the last stop. But that's my 2 cents on that one. Anyway, thank you, Steve. Thank you. Appreciate it. Chris, I'll let you go where you would like to go.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, we're going to give you a presentation and hopefully some discussion in terms of one thing Michelle didn't mention when she was sitting in this chair is a lot of these economic development projects have code names because the companies don't want you to know who they are. For example, UPS, when Mr. Weed was talking about UPS, that project, we didn't know who it was for months and months and months and months and months and months. It was called Project Hub. And so they always had this little code name. So Alex and Katie, who's been working on this new residential district project, gave it a code name, and we call it internally Project Hip and Trendy. So hip and trendy?
Oh, thank goodness.
Yes, and it's really about creating just standard, creating zoning districts, new residential zoning districts that talk about lot size. As you all are very familiar, we had all these PADs coming through talking about, well, we want 50-foot wide and 47-foot wide and so on. Well, the reason that we have to do that is because the city doesn't have in our current regulatory framework anything less than a 60-foot wide lot. The market is moving towards smaller lots because of price points, because of consumer choice, because who wants to pay $600 for air conditioning bill? So, it's about quality, still maintaining quality, but providing housing choices and affordability all at the same time. So, I've kind of started a little bit accidentally, but nevertheless, so that's what was the genesis of this idea of creating some new residential lot sizes. And it's also as a result of some outreach and conversations that, as Steve alluded to, that we've had with our some of our customers, some of our residential repeat customers. What can we do to make the process simpler? Well, as Michelle said earlier, time is money, so what can we do to reduce the time? So Alex has given me the click, which means go, right? So that's why we're doing this. As a matter of fact, 34 out of the last 37 rezonings that this body and the council has considered has been PADs, specifically about residential lot size. PADs also take an enormous amount of time. It takes us about 6 months to go from application to council, and they're also very large. I'm not going to drop this on the table because it would scare the you-know-what out of us, but this is a portion of the PAD out of Australia. So anytime a new home builder wants to come to the city, we have to crack open this however many inches of paper and figure out what it says and does it allow what the builder wants to build. And then oftentimes, these things are written over many decades, right? And so this one is, like this one I flicked to, is to 1987. So what does some of this stuff mean? Australia doesn't know. I mean, I'm not impugning them. We don't know. So we have to make an interpretation. What was the intent of this in 1987? So then we have some dialogue and so on and so forth, and we figure it out. But the point is, why do we have to give ourselves self-inflicted wounds with a document of this nature and magnitude? Our goal is to have a quality community that affords housing choice and options, that's the premier place in the West Valley to live, work, and play. And we can do that effectively through what we do regulatory-wise and what we conversely don't do from a regulatory standpoint. So, all that being said, one of the things we did early on in our lean journey, which is really process improvement, was look at what the vision and mission of that development continuum is that Michelle alluded to, which is the three departments: economic development, development services, which is us, and building safety, and then engineering. And so we came up with this vision and mission statement, and you'll notice that we really, as Alex goes through a lot of the presentation today, the I, initiate collaborative solutions. We're not coming up with solutions just in our office. We're actively working with our customers to figure out what their challenges are to bring more development to the community. We also responding to a market demands. 15 years ago, a 60-foot wide lot was okay. I mean, it was like what people desired and was affordable. Well, nowadays it's different. So the market has changed and we need to evolve, otherwise we'll get passed by. The D, deliver outstanding customer service. Again, as you heard Michelle talk about, that doesn't necessarily mean telling everybody what they want to hear, but it means being effective, predictable, open, and trying to find solutions. So that's really what we're trying to do. So tonight, what we just want to talk to you briefly about is what's going on in the marketplace, what our strategy is, some examples from around the valley of other developments and community regulations, city regulations that talk about and address small lots, and how we can apply those to Goodyear, and then what our proposed regulations are. So this is just a map of some of the other communities throughout the valley that have been very, very successful with the diversity of lot sizes. And if you'll excuse me for just a second. Can everybody see okay?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So this is Verrado, and I'm not going to get real deep in the weeds here, but there you have 45-foot wide lots, 50-foot wide lots, 60-foot, 35 feet, 45, 55. So there's a variety of different lots. And as you heard Michelle talk about earlier, and I think it might have been you saying Verrado is very successful, well, they have a whole different lotting package, which currently the only way to do this in Goodyear is through a PAD, which takes a minimum of 6 months. Okay? Very successful. We know what it looks like. It's very desirable. People are attracted to it. Sorry, I'm going up. Here's another one, Marley Park. And again, I'm not going to go into the weeds in this, but the point is they, again, have a variety of different lot sizes. 75 feet by 120, 53 feet, 48 feet is the smallest one. So again, a sprinkling of different lot sizes. Vistancia, which I'm sure Vistancia, again, as you can tell, just a variety of different lot sizes, 60, 65s, there's an 80. So they just have, again, a very diverse lot product.
Down to 30.
Yeah, down to 30, that's right. Mm-hmm. And then Eastmark, which is in the East Valley, obviously. Again, this is a smaller, this is almost like an infill project. It is pretty small, but you'll notice that, they have a variety of different lot sizes, all the way down to 35 feet to 55 feet. And these products, thank you, Alex, I'm sorry. These products, which we came by this information, I should also say, as a result of our conversation with Newland. They were gracious enough to bring in Nathan and Associates, which is a a very prominent, you know, I'm sorry.
Their broker.
Yeah, broker, very prominent brokerage, represents these communities and others. And we simply asked them, from a sales velocity standpoint and a quality standpoint, because he's familiar with Goodyear and what we're working to achieve, what do you see as as good examples of lot mixes from a sales velocity standpoint? And that's the information he shared. So we had about a 2-hour meeting with him and his team to really dig into the weeds and understand what are the challenges in the building community, and what can we do from a regulatory standpoint, again, to maintain the quality, but position ourselves where the market is and where it's going, if that makes sense.
So Christopher, are you saying that we're locked into a set of rules about what lot sizes we can have, and to change that, it's a 6-month process?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. The only way, the smallest lot that we currently allow is 60 feet wide. And so the only way to get smaller than that is through that PAD process. Which we've done, but it takes 6 months, and then you end up with something like this. So
You can change the regulation much quicker so that process doesn't.
so
Right.
that's correct.
Yeah.
So
What you're here to
yes, sir.
ask us about.
That's correct. That's correct. So also in conversation with Nate Nathan and his team, we asked him really what should.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you're fine. What? Yeah. She took your comment to heart about hurrying the meeting up. But we asked him what we should focus on, and there was 3 primary things. One is focused on the cost of the home. Now, we're not per se in the real estate business, but there is a correlation between what the city requires lot area-wise and the cost of a product. What Mr. Nathan's team informed us is that the market sweet spot is right about $279,000, and it's primarily for financing. That gives the greatest population the greatest opportunity to buy. If you begin to increase the price, people fall out of qualifications and things of that nature, and your market segments become much, much smaller. So the greatest, widest, deepest market segment is around that $280,000 mark. And so the cost of the home is really, really important. And also providing amenities is really, really important, because you want to make it a desirable, attractive place that people want to move to. And then the third thing is use the money wisely. Use your regulatory framework wisely and focus on the streetscape. Again, it's what people see. It's not necessarily the sides of the houses, and it's not necessarily a lot of gingerbread on the back of the house. So focus on the streetscape and making that driving around the community very, very attractive.
I like Verado.
Huge.
Kind of like that.
Huge point.
Right.
Yeah.
They're intentional about, all those communities have one thing in common
Exactly.
too, and that is how intentional they are about making a look.
Correct.
Utopia, when I went out there, it looks like Verado.
Right.
You know, they have a few little different amenity types, you know, the farm stand kind of, and the barn as the community center. It's very quaint.
And
that,
Verado's-
gardens and, you know, whatever.
Yes.
What is it? Community plots.
Right.
You know, and gardening. so
Community
that-
gardens,
yeah.
right? Verado's an interesting case study, if you will, for a couple of reasons. One is it started pre-recession, and the Main Street area was upfronted by the developer and essentially subsidized. And so that's not the free market. That's not the free market resulting that. That is a conscious decision by the developer at that time to front load all that. Also, yeah, please.
Sorry. So Verado is DMB, built that, and Eastmark is also DMB. One of the interesting things that we learned is Verado, they upfronted all the costs. Eastmark, it was their pet project. They were really excited, thinking it had the most potential. They actually opened with no amenities and kind of just went onto the market, and they said it was the scariest thing they've ever done, because their model is build the amenities and then the people will come. But because of the market at the time, they were sitting on all this land that they needed to get into. that they needed to start selling. So that, just keep that in mind as like a timeline progression, because Eastmark opened just a few years ago.
Right. And one of the lessons that Verado learned apparently as a result of our conversation with Mr. Nathan and his team was that prior to 2008 or so, there was a lot of focus in Verado on the complete package. So it's the front architecture, the side architecture, the rear architecture, the walls, and everything else, which makes it a beautiful product, but it was priced so high after the recession that they had even when things started getting better in 2012, 13, and 14, they had very low velocity. So they kind of reset what they required. They still kept the focus on the front streetscape, but sort of loosened, if you will, the regulatory aspect of what they required in terms of the side and the rear. And as a result, you still have a quality product out there, but the price points now are again back down, and it's their velocities have increased. The overarching thought of what Mr. Nathan's and his team's message is increase the global market for what the city has and is working with people to develop and produce. And out of the larger market, you'll have subsets that will then create, and there'll be the ability for people to say, you know what, I want to move out of this house and go to something that's cool and live by the ballpark. Or I want to go live at a store or above a store over at the Macerich Mall, for example. Yep. But you have to have the big enough market to support those subsets. And so his number one point of advice to us was continue to have high-quality projects, focus on the streetscape, and do what you can to increase the velocity of overall conventional product. Because as planners, we all want, alley-loaded and really cool stuff, but we just don't have that yet.
Are we lacking in some of those areas?
In what area? I'm sorry?
In the areas that you're talking about in terms of the global market share, are we missing something?
No, as Steve pointed to earlier, we're doing well, but what can we do to help? And that's why getting rid of these type of documents in 6 months, I mean, I don't even know how much it cost Newland to produce something like this, $200,000 probably, right? So, why should we require our development partners to do this type of stuff when we can still end up with the same quality and product at the end of the day, months faster and hundreds of thousands of dollars cheaper, and get our development community partners to market quicker? And so that's where we are.
Awesome. We're there. We're with you.
Okay, so I already kind of said this. We're not quite ready for the unique product that we're all really desiring of because we don't have that big enough market to support those subsets.
Even around the ballpark?
Even around the ballpark.
Wow.
What can we do? I already said this, so I got ahead of myself. Allow and make easy that conventional product. Ensure that our process is friendly. That doesn't, we're always happy to see customers, but by friendly meaning our process is easily understandable, there's consistency, there's no surprises, and the outcome is going to be predictable. And then you just continue to develop relationships. Okay, so as far as our strategy moving forward, really it's to create flexibility in design. We don't want to write rules that's just going to put us in a box or put our development partners in a box, because we'll be back before you do revise them, right? Because that's the nature of everything. But really focus in on ensuring the quality and that our process is predictable and clearly understood.
That's me.
So now this is Alex.
All
Yep.
right. So I think we started to discuss it a little bit when Michelle was here and what Steve kind of discussed. So the process works. You guys see most of at the front end and then when it starts building. But we go through the zoning process. Once that's completed, we do the preliminary plat, which you guys see. The final plats and the civils go straight to City Council. And then we go into design review, which is administrative. Building plans, and then you start building and do inspections and get your final C of O. So obviously this is lengthy, and as Christopher was mentioning, home builders they're trying to make money, they're trying to build product, they're trying to get the market going so they can be more successful. And a lot of times what we're seeing and why we're trying to rush through a lot of PAD amendments is because home builders aren't we've heard from Nate Nathans that home builders aren't closing on the land, purchasing the land from the property owners until a product is approved. So if we're going through a zoning amendment and they're doing their PADs, they want to submit their design review, and they want to, how are they going to know that we're going to approve their residential design review if we're not telling them until step 4 or 5? So they have no assurance, and they have very little level of comfort, just because the way our current system is pain. So as Christopher described, one of the first things we did when we started Project Hip and Trendy was brought the planners in, and we said, well, what is a cool neighborhood? What is a hip and trendy neighborhood? And you guys, I've heard you all say hip and trendy. This is where those buzzwords came in. And the big ones that Nate Nathans brought in as well are ones that we constantly talk about: Agritopia, Verado, Cooley Station, and Eastmark. And Christopher stole a lot of my lines, but the streetscape and the amenities are the...
to be as hip and trendy.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Sucker, I don't know.
The streetscapes and amenities are more important than the elevations and the side elevations. So in like Agritopia, we can see we have 2-story row after row, whereas in Goodyear, we limit it to 3.
That's a good point. Can I chime in for 1 second? So we do have a current regulation that limits the amount of 2-story homes in a row. 2-story homes are more cost-effective for people to buy because you get more square footage for the same money. So in Agritopia there in the bottom left, there's I think 5 2-story homes in a row. And so just a simple change like that can change the entire affordability of a neighborhood. And I would suspect that most people, if you walk them down the street in Agritopia, would say that's a quality neighborhood. It looks very enticing. It's not scary or fearful. Right. It's not scary like I'm going to get mugged, but scary in terms of just like vanilla boxes. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So.
Thank you. So the 3 major areas of focus that we looked at when we were updating the zoning ordinance were amenities, connectivity, and streetscape, because all of the PADs that we've seen, all of the cool hip and trendy neighborhoods, these are their most important factors and why we think they're successful. So as far as the amenities go, we're not looking for anything extravagant. I mean, we'd love that. We'd love, actually on the bottom here is Casa Lucero, which is going at the entrance of Estrella in the new Lucero community. It is their welcome center. They'll have a little coffee shop, just some office space, and then that connects to the trails within the Lucero community. So that's right in our own turf. But on the left side, we have the Orange Monster, which is in Eastmark. It's just a playground, but it's giant playground. It's unique. They put an orange color on it, had a name for it, and you see a little bit of orange theming throughout the community. So some light community theming. And then to the right, we have Agritopia and integrated commercial and integrated restaurants. So overall, we're just going for unique neighborhoods, and how do we achieve that in our zoning ordinance?
And to the previous point where I said before, we're not going to be prescriptive in saying you have to have integrated restaurant, you have to have this, that, the other. It goes back to that general theme of the amenity, quality communities that are very attractive and bring a lot of attention and investment have amenities. So it's working with the development community to figure out what that amenity is, because conversely, you don't want the same pool and clubhouse for every single development, because then there's no market differentiation. So we don't want to limit creativity.
Stealing my lines again. So the next one, just a little preview at, is connectivity. Obviously, the freeways are very important, access to those. We want to have trails. West Goodyear actually has a ton of trails that our Parks and Recreation Master Plan does require the trails to be connected, the regional trails. So we want to really hone in on that. And then provide services access to transit. And then the next one is Streetscape, which is, as Katie said to council, it's our bread and butter and what we've been talking about all night. So the most important, we have enhanced architecture on the front. If you look at some of the sides of these, there's not specific windows, there's not focus on details and pop-outs. We have the courtyards and porches are something that are very important, and you want to give people that open space, especially when lot sizes are going to decrease a little bit. They're building homes closer to the street, but they're also providing that separation between the actual street and the sidewalk. And then street trees are very important to keep people shaded, and you want to keep people outside and comfortable. And then, so the first one were 70-foot by 120-foot that's out in Eastmark. And then we can look at even in smaller lot widths. And then this one is also Eastmark. They have the paver driveways, once again porches, and then those street trees giving you that kind of feel that you do have a more open front yard, even though I'm 10 feet away from the sidewalk.
Just a note on this one, on this image, you'll notice that, you know, a lot of times when we talk to folks, when we talk about 50-foot wide lots, I think simply a garage door and a front door facing the street. But as you can tell from these elevations, you can actually make it work. Now, there is some unique design considerations here, as Alex indicated, with the pavers and things of that nature. But yeah, I think anybody in Goodyear would be really excited to see this type of quality product.
And to be honest, this is not a big departure from what we already have done. Canyon Trails does that exact thing, and was 2005.
The other one is Court Homes. So this is actually in Palm Valley. In this neighborhood, we have sidewalks on one side of the street, which is a different element that we don't usually allow. But the Palm Valley PAD did allow for it. With the sidewalk on the one side of the street, it allowed for extra parking on the other side. So it kept the parking and the sidewalk separated. There is shared parking. The court homes all have a shared driveway, similar to La Ventia. And then they do have a major emphasis on the amenities and open space, giving you that trail throughout Palm Valley. And these are just simple products that we could be allowing, but as it currently stands, our zoning ordinance does not generally allow this type of product.
Only through PAD.
Yeah, only through PAD. All right, so then we'll jump into the proposed update, which is what I've been working on for the past, what month is it? 8 months. So I am working on the draft. I definitely want to get a lot of feedback from you guys, some ideas of what you'd like to see. I know council is really looking forward to hearing your feedback. One thing that I think Christopher is going to talk about later, or I am, is the residential section of our zoning ordinance is currently 29 pages. It's a lot of repetitive information that I think I can get down to maybe 20 or less than that. I've done 15.
There's a goal.
Yeah, the shorter the better. I did research a lot of other cities' zoning ordinances, and there are some that are behind like we are, and they're lengthy and they're hard to read. But the more clear and easy and straightforward we can make it, the easier it is to allow the developers and home builders to just jump right in. And a lot of the cities who are behind are doing the same, are making the same updates because they also only have 60-foot wide lots or larger.
At our planning conventions, we're encouraging them to do more PADs because it takes them longer, and then we'll be able to go faster.
Good thinking, Chris.
So these districts on the right are currently how our districts are laid out. R1 identifies one single-family dwelling on a lot, and then 6, 7, and 10 are the size of the lot. So the 60-foot wide lots are 6,000 square feet because it's 60 by 100. 70, 80, and so on. And then the AU is the agricultural urban for custom homes or for further agriculture development. We're proposing 3 new districts. One is going to be an attached one, so triplexes or row homes. The next one is going to be a court home product, so either like the La Ventia product or that Palm Valley product, kind of having a motor court in the center, or even a green court where the houses face a green area when you walk out your front door and you have the garage a little hidden in the back. And there's actually a mistake on this slide. The lots that we're proposing now is the 50-foot wide lot. We'd like to propose that it be a 45-foot wide lot, and then we'll change the 60-foot wide lot to a 55-foot wide lot, which I'll go into a little bit further as we move forward.
Alex?
Yeah.
I have a question. I was at one of the council meetings, it was either very early this year or late last year, and the width of lots was brought up and passed by the council. You were going to reduce them. Is this what you're talking about here?
Yes.
Or are we going after more reduction?
No, this is it.
Okay.
So currently our regulations, we do have the zoning ordinance, and within the zoning ordinance and the parks master plan, we require 15% open space, 10% open space, and 5% open space, depending on the size of the lots. And then that subdivisions should have a 5-acre park, typically, depending on the size of the subdivision. And then connectivity, like I said, the West Goodyear has that regional trail system that runs through. These are already required by our zoning ordinance. And then we have the design guidelines, which were just updated in 2014. And those are a lot of the building elevations and how the houses are laid out. So we do have a lot of methods for quality development in place. We just think we can make it better. So the plan to allow the smaller lot developments is to provide flexibility in terms of the lot size, but ensuring that we get those unique neighborhood features that we've seen create the ideal neighborhoods that we want. And then when I did my research, Mesa had a really interesting code which is what ours is modeled after, where it's the smaller size lots will be allowed as long as you conform to 2 connectivity, and these are just examples. So let's say you did 50-foot wide lots. You'd pick from your selection of it's within a growth area that's designated by the general plan. There's trail system connections. There's limited subdivision perimeter walls. So you kind of have a bucket to pick from, and the number that you pick is just based on the reduction. So then as far as amenities go, besides what's already required by the Parks Master Plan, you're adding additional parks, you're integrating commercial, you're adding a pool and rec center, some cool stuff that we discussed before, and then streetscape, porches in every unit or courtyards, detached sidewalks, alley-loaded and deep recessed homes or garages. And Christopher kind of was mentioning that yeah, we're not going to require you to do all these things in these giant rec centers, but as long as you're meeting that intent and you're coming up with something creative and not just doing your standard neighborhood, you're allowed to go smaller, and you can save money on those features by adding, or save money on those, and you can spend it in a better place where you're contributing to the neighborhood.
So this is like a menu, if you will. So you have to pick 2 appetizers. You know, you got this, and you get 1 dessert. So that's the way that we're approaching it. Again, to create that flexibility, certainty on the quality, certainty on the process, but flexibility to allow creativity.
And so, like I said, Mesa is using this method, and they have been really successful.
Are they the only one?
The only one that I found that has the deviations in really small lot sizes, none of the other Valley cities have it as straightforward as they do. Phoenix has, their zoning code is insane because they have so many districts, so I kind of avoided that one. But yeah, a lot of our neighbors have it similar to what we have. We actually were just contacted by one of our neighbors recently, and they wanted to hear what we were doing.
Don't return that. Give him Chris's process.
Yeah. So adding to that, and kind of as I was alluding to earlier, the day we change our lot size to 45, or even if it was 50, the next day we'd get a phone call saying, well, we need 42-foot wide lots. So we came up with this method that is also similar to Mesa's, and the reason why we're changing the 50 to 45 and 60 to 55 is to allow a 5-foot lot reduction for the 50, or the 50. See, I'm confused because the slide's wrong. So 45s to 40 feet and 55s to 50. And if you do those, you have to obviously pick more amenities from the buckets.
You can continue to reduce the lot size if you pick more of those amenities out of that menu.
Yeah, thank
Incentivizing.
you. Yeah. And
Things you want them.
yep, similar to that, kind of what we've heard too is our residential design guidelines are a little strict. So cutting back on those, maybe allowing two-story homes in the whole subdivision, as long as you're providing the trade-off. So like I said, when we started, the planning department met up and we had a great discussion of what does a good community look like to you. And a lot of the stuff, when we met with Nathan's, were the things that we were saying we could trade off. Is we'll give a little bit on the sides of the houses, but give a little bit more and detached sidewalks. So it was really interesting to see that what we were thinking is what's hip and trendy and what will progress into what we're hoping to become.
Well, you are.
Thank you. Let's see. And the next slide. Okay, so this is a clip of the draft that I've been working on. And some of the math in here, if you calculate it, it's off. So it's still in a draft mode. But it's adding those new districts and then changing some of the setbacks to offer that flexibility. And as far as the residential design review, I kind of already went over a little bit of this, allowing two-story homes throughout, revise the standards on the elevations, focusing on architecture on the streetscape rather than the sides or the rear. And one other thing that we was kind of like, oh, why didn't we think of that? And we've actually heard from home builders before, but we've been a little bit hesitant, is allowing them to submit without review, design review that has been previously approved. So if Estrella builds one, or if someone in Estrella builds one model or 3 houses, they have to go through the same design review process to get it on a different parcel in Estrella. So we're kind of looking at our processes to see if that could be easier, because that's a question we get a lot is, well, we already had it approved over here. Why can't you just let us build it over here? So that's one of those that we're considering as well. That's back at you.
Is this me?
Yeah.
So again, our focus, as Steve kind of alluded to, is to really see where we can reduce the length of time of the process and be as efficient as possible. And we certainly couldn't have had a twofold increase in our applications, as you saw from Steve, with the same number of staff without improving our efficiency. If we were conducting business the old way, I would say all my hair would have fallen out, but that's probably not a good analogy. All Alex's hair would have fallen out. So she's thankful that we've applied some new techniques into how we manage our business. So again, it's really about how can we overlap these things. We do have to follow the law, which we're always going to do. We do have to give public notice on certain types of cases, which we're always going to do. And we're going to do everything correctly and do everything that we need to do. But there are times in which we can overlap these segments in order to save time. So we're always looking for ways in which we can improve in that regard. As there's Alex's thing here. So we're going down to 15. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. She mentioned the design guidelines, and we're going to continue to look at process improvements. One of the things I'd just like to say is that there's many, as Alex, or maybe it was Steve that alluded to it earlier, about like the landscape ordinances all scattered throughout various city documents. And it really creates some confusion because it's so easy to change one document and not check another, and that contradicts, and then we get the phone call, and then we got to figure out, and we got to do an interpretation. So just really trying to be as efficient and straightforward as possible. So I kind of breezed through that, but what we want to do is we actually want to continue to attract the quality development that we have. Continue that momentum forward, increase our velocity and our overall market base, because we do that, we get the things that we want. As Michelle alluded to, retail, we need more daytime people, we need more rooftops, and we need a bigger market in order to get these really nifty, hip and trendy type neighborhoods and developments that we all want to see. So everything is integrated, and not one part of that balloon is independent of the other. If you push on one side, it's going to pop up on the other. And so again, just kind of circling back to where we started, what our vision and mission was, I hope you can see the correlation between not only our approach in dealing with our customers and listening to industry experts who know things that we don't, and working with our constituents. Australia represents 30-some-odd% of our building permits, and nearly half of all the subdivision plats that come through the Planning Commission are Australia. So very much, we're very lucky to have such a quality partner as them. But we also deploy every one of these tactics in what Alex and Katie have been working on to come up with this proposal for you all tonight. I won't read it all because you all are smart folks, but we actually put this into motion to end up with this innovative proposal before you tonight. I'll also say, I'm almost done, I promise, is that Katie and Alex did a presentation in front of the council, very similar presentation, almost exact, in July, and the council said, hey, this is great, we're for it, but we do have a couple of things that we just want you to be aware of, and I just want to run down this list. Some of the concerns we heard from council was two-story homes are great, but let's make sure that it doesn't create a cavern aspect on our streetscapes. Remember that comment I made about just vanilla boxes. We don't want a whole lot of vanilla boxes. So totally understood that. There was a lot of conversation on maintaining the quality of the communities and the quality of Goodyear, and not losing the uniqueness that Goodyear has. Again, continue to streamline our process, make it flexible. And one thing that some of the conversation was about was early on, the thought process that the city had was PADs were the way to allow creativity instead of having to have a whole lot of city rules and regulations. Well, that is a true statement. I can't argue that because I've actually personally said that before. It's a true statement. PADs do allow creativity, but they're also very laborious and very challenging to put together. So if we can create in our ordinance already the things that we want to have happen and streamline it and shave 3 or 4 months off a process, let's attack it that way. I just want to be clear, even if you all recommend and council ultimately approves Project Hip and Trendy, we still will have PADs in the community. You still will see PADs, but we believe that you'll see a shift from a whole lot of residential PAD rezonings to just straight up rezonings from blah, blah, blah to Project Hip and Trendy Zoning District R16 Alex Listinsky or whatever we name it. So, we'll see that shift because it saves so much time and money. And so one of the other things that the council talked about was just ensuring that as the lot sizes get smaller, that open space increases correspondingly, so communities and kids and families have a place to play, because you're kind of taking backyard space, so to speak, which is all very good comments. So we are moving forward with the project. We wanted to come tonight with you and have this conversation, see if there's any glaring omissions that we make, if there was anything that we suggested that was scary to you, get any feedback or answer any questions. But we are like to get your input, and then we're going to move forward relatively quick and get this back to them in what, September?
Yeah, so the commission meeting for your guys' recommendation is September 13th, and we'll be taking it to council on October 3rd.
That is fast.
One thing I do want to mention that Christopher said about there will be more PADs is that once this kind of goes out, our PAD process was implemented to bring the creativity, and all of the examples that we've given, they're all PADs. One thing that I did learn from Mesa is that they implemented the code, and it was a little hard to adjust because they've been working with the same developers, and that developers were still trying to get around doing extra work to do the PADs. But actually, their planning commission was a little tired of seeing all these PADs when we built this system for you that should bring you a good neighborhood, and they put their foot down, and Mesa said that was their biggest struggle is they still had the PADs, but until someone was like, no, we did this for you, that's when it was an easier they were just like, okay, we'll do it now. So moving forward, when you do see the PADs, there certainly are great PADs, and we're working really closely with developers who do PADs to make sure it is unique and make sure it is meeting the high quality, but just keep an eye out for quality.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be steering people to these new districts as much as possible, frankly.
Quick question. When you do a development, are all of the requirements for all the homes, the lot sizes, going to have to be the same? Or are you going to have mixed lot sizes within that development? In other words, if you're going to do a development,
Right.
they're all going to be 40s, or they're going to be 70s, and
Well, I think it boils down to how big the parcel is. In Goodyear, we really are very fortunate to be land rich, so to speak, where we have projects that are several 100,000 acres, several hundred or thousands of acres. So instead of like the 10 or the 15 acre lots, projects, excuse me. So by nature of diversity, the development, like in Australia, for example, they always have a sprinkling of different lot sizes, a diversity of lot sizes. You'll see in West Goodyear, I think, was probably a very likely candidate for the implementation of these new residential districts because the market has changed a little bit there. And so I think you'll see that would probably be the area of the city that picks up these new districts most frequently. And those projects are typically several hundred acres. They're not thousands, but several hundred acres. So you'll probably, I would expect to see 2, 3, maybe 4 of these residential districts applied in those projects, if that answers your question.
it does. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure there are some built-in checks for areas that you want to protect the landscaping. For example, in Estrella Mountain Ranch, the 2-story thing concerns me because the 2 stories are going to block a lot of the natural beauty of Estrella Mountain Ranch. I'm sure there's already checks in place for that, but that's one of my concerns.
Sure. No, that's a great point. So we work with Australia all the time, and actually they propose to take advantage because think about the amenities. Australia is very land rich. Can't really build on the mountains, but one of the things that we heard is trails, active lifestyles are really important. And Casa Lucero is really an activity hub that also is proposed to have like a little bike shop in it and things of that nature that connects up to the regional trail system there. So I know like with Australia, we don't have to, we work with them to make sure that they're doing that, but we don't have to lay awake at night worrying that they're not going to propose something that's good. Doesn't mean we take it for granted,
Right.
but at the same point in time, we're on the very similar page. Other places we may need to take a look at that, if that answers your question.
Thank you.
I think we're definitely on a solid path here, and I appreciate the timeline is very short and quick. My recommendation is after we get the regulations put together, is that maybe we go back to Nathan and Newland and say, how do we put this in a form to market it back to developers, so that we don't run into that situation of they just go the old path, that we can say, because it makes complete sense to me what you said about the menu. You want to go smaller, you pick from the menu. And so I don't, maybe that could help head off that whole PAD situation that Mesa ran into.
Great suggestion, absolutely. So anybody else have any questions, comments, feedback, concerns about anything you heard tonight?
I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, keep going.
Thank Alex and Katie for all their work. I just happen to be the spokesperson tonight, so. So we're going to move forward with that, so great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And so,
8.5?
8.5. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'd propose to do, because it's 8 o'clock, and this is a special meeting. Y'all were here last week, and we appreciate your attendance. And we've covered a lot of territory tonight that I thought was really foundational and important. But the planning commissioner training is equally foundational and important, and I want it to be impactful. And so what I'd like to do is we have 2 or maybe 3 agendas on our September agenda. 3 action items on our September agenda. If it pleases the commission, is we can move this to September, if that's okay with you.
Those 3 agenda items are not.
They shouldn't be a big load. Right. Right.
Yeah, so I would propose that I don't think we have to table, but we could just move it to next September. It's fine by me.
But everything is a quid pro quo.
Oh, boy.
So, right? So, as you know, we've also talked about that we're wanting to move toward like getting you all iPads, so we're not wasting time and effort and resources on making copies and things of that nature, because we already email you the agendas. So that's one of the things that we're working with our IT department to repurpose some iPads. But we did put together with Heather's yeoman's help a planning commissioner training handbook. It's about 30 pages, but that's front and back, so it's 15 pages, so it's not too bad. It's light reading, and it's good sort of foundational material, and it's on this thumb drive.
I don't think we've ever had this before.
Yeah, well, welcome. It's a brand new world, right?
I like it.
So I'm going to hand each one of you one of these. We don't want the thumb drive back, but if you would, just spend 30 minutes sometime before the work session next time, and I have a presentation, we'll run through it, and really I want to have some just conversation and dialogue with you instead of just talking at you. I would like to talk with you. So that's what the quid pro quo is.
Thank you. Thank you. My request to have that type of discussion is that we just have this set up again. We can do the business up there and then move down to this.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
I think it's much better to have a conversation.
Absolutely.
So, any other staff comments?
No, thank you for coming to our special meeting. We thought it was great. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you.
With that, the meeting's adjourned.